Have you ever wondered what turned a chaotic and improvised comedy set at a golf course into a timeless cultural icon? Let us travel back in time to the summer of 1980, when the scorching heat of Florida and the boisterous laughter from the Bushwood Country Club took over theaters across the United States. Caddyshack was not merely a film. It was a brilliant piece of memory for an entire generation, where the botched swings of Ty Webb, the madness of Carl Spackler, and the battle of wits between the elite and the caddie crew created a storm of laughter that could never be replicated. But behind the classic scenes that we often quote during gatherings, there lie countless untold stories. There are secrets about the high-pressure production process, the unprecedented improvisations of the A-list stars, and even incidents that nearly prevented the film from ever being completed. These reels are not just about golf clubs, green grass, and a dancing gopher. They represent a fascinating journey full of ups and downs behind the lens that even the most hardcore fans of 1980s comedies may not have noticed. Today, let us peel back every layer of secrecy, flip through the old files, and explore 15 shocking facts that you may have missed over the past 4 decades. Whether you have watched Caddyshack once or dozens of times, the following details will certainly make you view this favorite film through an entirely new lens. Fasten your seatbelts. We are going back to the Bushwood course right now. 1. Natural disaster striking on day 1. Right from the first day, perhaps fate had forewarned that the process of making Caddyshack would be anything but normal. The crew began gathering in Florida with the exact spirit of a summer comedy movie: hot sun, lush green golf courses, and parties lasting all night long. But then, nature unexpectedly turned everything into chaos in just a few hours. On the very first day of shooting, Hurricane David began making landfall directly in the filming area. Strong winds whipped equipment around. Heavy rain left the entire set practically paralyzed. According to many accounts, the crew had to evacuate urgently in chaos as the storm advanced much faster than predicted. Several sets were completely ruined, the shooting schedule was stalled for many days, and every single initial plan nearly collapsed. The memorable thing is that despite encountering every kind of disaster, from weather, partying, backstage conflicts, to chaotic shooting schedules, the movie ultimately survived. And perhaps that is also the reason Caddyshack carries a feeling very different from modern comedy movies. It is not perfect. It is messy. It sometimes feels as if it is about to fall apart at any moment. But that exact chaos created a unique soul for the movie, like a crazy, warm, and free memory of old Hollywood that today barely exists anymore. 2. The tragedy of the creator. When mentioning Caddyshack, most audiences will remember the chaotic laughter, the crazy banter, and the energy very typical of Hollywood in the late 70s. But behind that classic comedy movie, there is a sad story that many people do not know at all. The person behind the soul of Caddyshack was Douglas Kenney, a genius co-writer, co-founder of National Lampoon, and also the brain that created the satirical comedy style that shaped a whole generation of American movies. Friends described him as an extremely smart, sharp person, but also one who always carried an indescribable insecurity. After the movie was completed, Douglas was said to be extremely disappointed when many of his favorite scenes were cut from the final edit. To the audience, Caddyshack was an unexpected hit, but to himself, the movie was like something that was never fully complete. Then, just a few weeks after the movie premiere, Douglas Kenney passed away during a trip to Hawaii at the age of 33, after a mysterious fall from a cliff. To this day, that death still haunts many people in Hollywood. And what makes the story even more haunting is the fact that the creator of one of the funniest movies in American history ultimately departed in darkness and loneliness. 3. A feud that almost led to real-life fistfights. Today, many audiences view Bill Murray and Chevy Chase as 2 classic comedy icons of old Hollywood. But at the time of making Caddyshack, their relationship in real life was so tense that it could explode at any moment. The two had worked together on Saturday Night Live, where both were prominent faces of the new generation of American comedy in the late 70s. But behind the spotlights, the competition over ego, fame, and comedy style led to a famous brawl in 1978. According to many accounts, they actually rushed to punch each other backstage, to the point that their faces were scratched and the whole crew had to intervene. Therefore, when both appeared in Caddyshack, the film crew always lived in a state of guarding against war. Interestingly, the director almost intentionally limited them from being near each other for too long to avoid conflict breaking out again. And perhaps for that reason, their 2 characters only appeared together in exactly one famous short scene of the movie. But ironically, the real-life tension created a strange energy on screen, making that scene one of the most memorable moments of Caddyshack. 4. Mickey Rourke was almost the male lead Before Michael O'Keefe became the gentle Danny Noonan in Caddyshack, this role almost belonged to a completely different name, Mickey Rourke. Today, when mentioning Mickey Rourke, audiences usually remember his gritty, rugged, and weathered appearance in rebellious roles. But in the late 70s, Rourke was still just a young actor looking for his first breakthrough opportunity in Hollywood. According to many sources, he once came very close to being chosen for the role of Danny, the teenager working as a caddy with the dream of changing his life thanks to the high-class golf course. But then director Harold Ramis changed his mind at the last minute. The reason sounds both simple and interesting: Mickey Rourke looked too dangerous. Ramis felt that Rourke's sharp face, rebellious eyes, and gangster demeanor made it hard for the audience to believe this was an innocent, clumsy, and easily bullied boy. Instead, the final role went to Michael O'Keefe with a much more gentle and relatable image. Looking back today, that decision almost changed the whole movie, because Danny Noonan was the only normal person amidst a world full of eccentrics in Caddyshack. And sometimes, just changing one face, the whole feeling of the movie changes completely along with it. 5. The terrifying explosion that made a pilot think a plane crashed. The ending of Caddyshack has always been considered one of the most chaotic and over-the-top endings of American comedy movies at that time. But what many audiences do not know is, the huge explosion on screen almost caused a real-life alarm situation. To shoot the scene of the golf course being blown up in the final battle of the movie, the film crew used an amount of explosives much larger than originally planned. When the camera started rolling, the whole area shook with a series of consecutive explosions. Soil and rocks blasted into the sky, and a black smoke column rose so high that it could be seen from very far away. And then the unexpected happened. A commercial pilot who was preparing to land at a nearby airport saw the giant smoke column and frantically contacted air traffic control because he believed a serious plane crash had just occurred. In a few short minutes, everything almost became a real emergency situation, until people discovered that the disaster was actually just the Caddyshack crew shooting the final scene. Hearing the story again today, it is both funny and very characteristic of Hollywood back then, an era when filmmakers always wanted everything to be bigger, crazier, and more real, even if it made outsiders think the world had just exploded. 6. Rodney Dangerfield thinking he was a failure. Today, Rodney Dangerfield is viewed as one of the greatest souls of Caddyshack. But what very few people know is that throughout the filming process, Rodney himself believed he was failing miserably. Before Caddyshack, Rodney was a legend of the American Comedy Club stage. He was famous for a high-speed stand-up style where every punchline made the audience burst into laughter immediately. But cinema was completely different. The cameras were quiet, the crew was quiet. No one reacted, and that made Rodney truly panic. After many takes, he began losing his spirit because he thought he was not funny on screen at all. According to accounts from the crew, Rodney even lost his temper and nearly broke down because he believed his first film career step was becoming a disaster. Until director Harold Ramis had to pull him into a corner and explain a very simple thing: everyone is trying to hold back their laughter so the microphones can capture clean dialogue audio. That moment was both funny and very endearing, because behind the image of a legendary comedian, Rodney was still just an artist who always needed to hear laughter from the audience to know he was reaching them. And ironically, the lines he worried about the most ultimately became classic Hollywood quotes for decades afterward. 7. The set flooded with illegal substances. If looking back at Hollywood in the late 70s and early 80s, there is a truth that many people in the film industry today admit: it was the era of endless parties. And the set of Caddyshack was almost a perfect miniature image of that chaotic period. The movie was shot for 11 weeks in Florida, but according to the stories of many crew members, the atmosphere behind the camera was sometimes crazier than the movie itself on screen. Actor Michael O'Keefe later admitted that cocaine appeared on the set so much that it was like buying food from a food truck. A statement that is both funny and makes people startle when looking back at Hollywood culture at that time. The strange thing is that amidst that chaos, the whole crew still created one of the most iconic comedy movies in America. There were party nights that lasted until morning. There were scenes where actors almost completely improvised because they were too high. And that is exactly what created the natural, wild, and unpredictable feeling that audiences have loved for over 40 years. But looking back today, that story brings a sense of nostalgia and is also like a very real slice of a wild Hollywood that has disappeared forever. 8. Bill Murray mysteriously missing 160 kilometers from the set. If there is one person who perfectly represents the spontaneous chaos of Caddyshack, it is definitely Bill Murray. And the story of his mysterious disappearance during filming is still told by Hollywood today as an unbelievable anecdote. Throughout the recording process in Florida, parties took place almost every night. The crew stayed up until morning, slept very little, and lived in a crazy atmosphere true to old Hollywood style. But one morning, everything suddenly became chaotic when Bill Murray completely disappeared before shooting time. No one found him at the hotel. No one knew where he went. The director and the whole crew started to really panic because the shooting schedule was being delayed. And the funniest thing was, Bill Murray himself, when waking up, did not understand what had happened either. He found himself lying in an old trailer in a remote camping area nearly 160 kilometers away from the set. According to his later account, Murray barely remembered how he got there. It sounds like a comedy movie scene written in advance, but that was a true story behind Caddyshack, a movie where the line between real life and madness on screen sometimes disappeared completely. 9. A record-breaking script draft. If modern Hollywood is famous for movies that are tightly calculated down to every single minute, then Caddyshack was almost the exact opposite. The first draft of the movie script was up to 250 pages long, a nearly absurd number in the film industry. Normally, one page of script equates to about 1 minute of film. That means if they shot the entire original content intact, Caddyshack could have lasted nearly 4 hours. Interestingly, that draft was not just long, but also extremely chaotic. There were dozens of supporting characters, many overlapping storylines, endless dialogue segments, and countless spontaneous situations added constantly during the writing process. According to many accounts, the script was closer to a notebook of crazy ideas than a complete movie. Par for the course, that was also the very special beauty of Hollywood in the late 70s. Filmmakers back then sometimes did not care too much about standard structure. They just wanted to create something fun, free, and different. In the end, most of the script was forced to be cut so the movie could be released in theaters. But many believe that exact excess created the vibrant, chaotic feeling of Caddyshack, as if the movie was always spilling out past its own boundaries. 10. The gopher was just a last-minute stand-in. Speaking of Caddyshack, the image of the gopher destroying the golf course has almost become an immortal symbol of the movie. But the interesting thing is, that famous creature in reality was just a last-minute rescue solution. Initially, the character Carl Spackler of Bill Murray only appeared sporadically in the movie as a quirky supporting character. After completing the main shooting, director Harold Ramis started reviewing the edit and realized a big problem. Bill Murray scenes, though very funny, did not connect into a clear storyline. So the whole crew had to return to the golf course to add more content. And from that rush, the idea about the war between Carl and the gopher was born. No one at that time thought this would become the soul of the movie. The mechanical gopher was created quite hastily. Even by Hollywood standards of that time, it was not too sophisticated. But that cute silliness made the audience fall in love. Carl Spackler talked to explosives, dug up the golf course, and declared war on a small animal as if participating in a real war. The best thing about old Hollywood sometimes lies right there. Iconic moments are not always perfectly planned. Sometimes they appear from chaos, patching up, and a bit of strange luck that no one can explain. 11. A Star Wars engineer going to make a gopher. There is an extremely interesting detail that many audiences have never realized when watching Caddyshack. The silly gopher causing an uproar across the golf course was actually created by the very people who made the magic of Star Wars. Standing behind that small creature was the special effects team of John Dykstra, a visual effects legend who had just won an Oscar thanks to Star Wars a few years prior. It sounds unbelievable to think that the same group of artists who created spaceships, galactic battles, and peak science fiction effects now spent time manufacturing a frowning gopher for a golf course comedy. But that was also the beauty of Hollywood in that era. The gopher in Caddyshack was not a simple toy. It was an animatronic controlled extremely sophisticatedly by late 70s standards. The effects team had to try a series of facial expressions, eye movements, and body vibrations to make it look both silly and crafty, just like a live cartoon. The cool thing is that no one at that time suspected the gopher would end up just as famous as the real actors. And thinking back, it is quite funny. A piece of technology that once helped create a galaxy far, far away in Star Wars ultimately was used to tell the story of a gardener going mad because of a gopher ruining a golf course. 12. Almost a tear-jerking drama movie. When mentioning Caddyshack, the majority of audiences will think immediately of crazy jokes, energetic music, and the brainless energy, very characteristic of 80s American comedies. But the surprise is that the first version of the movie was completely different. The original idea was actually a quite serious coming-of-age drama movie. The writers wanted to tell the story of poor teenagers working as caddies at a golf course for the upper class, a place where the gap between rich and poor appeared clearly in every glance, every single tip, and every fragile chance to change one life. The character Danny Noonan was initially built as the emotional center of the film. His journey was not meant to create laughter, but was a bitter story about a working-class kid trying to squeeze into the world of the wealthy American class. But then everything changed when the comedic cast started appearing. The improvisation of Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, and Rodney Dangerfield was so powerful that the movie gradually veered completely off its original track. And strangely enough, that exact loss of control saved Caddyshack from becoming an ordinary teen movie. It transformed the film into a chaos full of laughter, something American audiences still talk about more than 40 years later. 13. The most classic scene in the movie was entirely made up. There is one thing that makes Americans especially love Caddyshack for decades: the feeling that everything in the movie is so natural, as if no one is acting. And no scene represents that clearer than the legendary meeting between Ty Webb of Chevy Chase and Carl Spackler of Bill Murray. The crazy thing is that the famous scene did not exist in the script at first. When the movie was nearly completed, director Harold Ramis suddenly realized that the two biggest comedy stars of the movie had never had a scene together. For a movie gathering both Chevy Chase and Bill Murray, that was almost a disaster. Therefore, Ramis decided to do something that few studios would dare to allow today. He put both of them in a room, turned on the camera, and pretty much said, "Just do your thing." No written dialogue, no camera markings, no preparation. And the result became one of the most iconic comedy segments in Hollywood history. The way Ty Webb calmly walked into Carl Spackler, and then the two tossed quirky lines back and forth as if talking in real life, created a very special chaotic feeling that modern movies rarely replicate. Today, when watching that scene again, many audiences still think it was written extremely smartly. But the truth is, most of it was just two comedy geniuses making things up in front of the camera and accidentally creating cinematic magic. 14. The disgusting Baby Ruth candy pool scene was real. Among all the shocking comedy scenes of Caddyshack, perhaps no moment is both more disgusting and funnier than the scene where the whole pool is in chaos because people think there is something floating in the water. What makes this segment legendary lies in the reaction of the crowd. The screaming, the panic jumps out of the pool, and then the final twist: the culprit was just a melted Baby Ruth candy bar. But few people know that the famous prank was not thought up by Hollywood writers. It was actually taken directly from the childhood memories of Bill Murray family. According to the story, the Murray brothers during their school days used to witness or perform themselves mischiefs of this kind at public pools. Just throw a chocolate bar into the water and watch the chaos begin to spread. It sounds both childish and silly, but that was also the very characteristic style of comedy in America back then. Not complicated, not overly sophisticated, just simply making the whole room laugh at an extremely stupid idea. The interesting thing is that, until today, the Baby Ruth scene is still viewed as one of the most famous pranks in American comedy movie history. And with many audiences who grew up in the 80s, just mentioning it, all the memories of youth immediately come rushing back. 15. Turning into a Marx Brothers movie. One of the most interesting things about Caddyshack is the feeling that the movie never seemed to follow any rules. Characters appear and then disappear. Dialogue lines sound like they were thought up right on the spot. And at times, the story feels more like a series of comedy sketches than a traditional movie. That was not an accident. Director Harold Ramis later admitted that his comedic cast almost destroyed the original film structure with their continuous improvisation. Every day on set, the actors would think up more new dialogue, new jokes, or acting directions completely different from the script. As a result, the movie gradually carried a chaotic energy resembling the style of the Marx Brothers, the legendary comedy group famous for a crazy, illogical, and unpredictable style of humor. And actually, that was exactly what made Caddyshack special. It did not try to become a perfect movie. It felt like a party where everyone was trying to make the other person burst out laughing. There were scenes that had almost nothing to do with the main plot, yet made audiences remember them for decades. Today, Hollywood rarely allows that kind of creative chaos to exist anymore. But perhaps that loss of control was the true soul of Caddyshack, a movie where the feeling of freedom was more important than any storytelling rules. More than 4 decades have passed, but the laughter at Bushwood seems to have never faded. Caddyshack is not only a milestone in the careers of legends like Bill Murray or Chevy Chase, but also a part of the cinematic heritage that we always want to return to whenever we need a bit of nostalgia. Among the 15 facts just mentioned, which detail surprised you the most? Please share your thoughts below. Do not forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss out on the next exciting cinematic discovery journeys. See you again.